dry. Today we're going to go over how you paint the trim in your room. Now first of all, there's a little bit of equipment that you're going to need. You're going to need your masker with some 9-inch paper and some tape. You're probably going to need some 1.5 or 2-inch white tape and some blue tape too. Now first of all, if you're going to be painting windows and you need to tape off the glass, here's how you tape off glass. Now of course in this room I'm not taping the glass. Part of the windows are natural wood. I'm just going to be painting that outer piece of trim. So I'm going to have to mask that a little differently. Now if you've got baseboard that you need to paint, you're going to have to mask along the edge of that. Now when you're masking the carpet below the baseboard, push that paper and tape up a little bit against the baseboard and then jam it right under the baseboard above the carpet with your fingernails, or you can use a 5-way. Be careful not to cut the tape. And just get it underneath there if you can, because that's the only way to really prevent the paint from dripping down onto the carpet there. Okay, now if you're going to be painting a door, probably at this point it's easiest to remove the door from its hinges. Set it up somewhere. If you can take it to the garage, great. If you want to just paint it in the room, that works too. Alright, now you're also going to need a brush, of course, to paint the trim. Now, throughout this series I've been advocating a 3.5-inch angled latex brush, and I still say that's the tool of choice. I think it's easier to cut a straight line with a bigger brush because it's more stable. However, if you're not comfortable with that, you could maybe go with a 2.5-inch or a 2-inch angled brush. I would not recommend going with one of these little 1.5-inch brushes. It's really difficult to cut a straight line and they don't hold any paint anyway. Now some people wonder how best to hold a paintbrush. I think this is the best way. You have your thumb on one side, you have your forefinger right there, then 3 fingers on that side. It gives you a lot of strength either way. It's kind of like holding a pencil. Now of course you're going to need a cutting pot with your trim paint in it. Most people on interior trim will use a latex semi-gloss enamel. So once you've got your masking done and the doors off and you've got your paint all set up and ready to go, it's time to start brushing the trim. Now there are really just a few key concepts that I want to go over, and these will apply across the board to any trim that you're brushing and painting. Now the first concept I want to talk about is that you always want to divide your trim into legs, okay? We'll call this the first leg, this the second leg, and this is the third leg, alright? Okay, so first I'm going to start with this face out here and this top leg, alright? First I'm going to lay the paint on that whole face. Then before I move on to the underside, I'm going to put my brush right up in that corner there, right up in that angle, align those bristles perfectly with that joint, and I'm going to do a final layoff stroke toward the middle. Then I'm going to go over here, align those bristles, and do a final layoff stroke toward the middle. Then I go under here, and I'll lay the paint on the underside. And before I move on, do my final strokes, always toward the middle. Okay, now that same concept is going to apply if you're doing these legs on the side, okay? You always lay the paint on the entire leg, then you put your bristles back up in that corner, perfectly aligned with that joint, and lay it right off toward the middle. Then you go down to the bottom and come right back up. next big challenge when you're painting the trim is that you've got to cut this edge between the trim and the wall. Remember, when you painted the wall, you came over onto the trim just a little bit because you wanted to make sure you got that entire wall painted. Well, now you get the opportunity to cut it back with the trim and make that line perfectly straight. But how can we make that line perfectly straight? Well, now a lot of people are going to try to use tape, all right? They're going to put some blue tape along here in hopes that they can paint the edge of this trim and get a straight line. Well, that'll work if you absolutely have to do it that way. You need to make sure you push that tape down so hard against that wall that minimize the bleeding underneath there. But no matter what, because it's kind of a bumpy line, there's always going to be a little bit of a ragged edge there. If you just cut that line freehand, you can actually make it look straighter and smoother, in my opinion. Now, there's a trick to it. And the trick is that you never allow your trim paint to go out onto the wall at all. You always air your line a little bit on the side of the trim. Okay, now why do you do that? Because if you're standing here and looking at it, if there's any trim paint on the wall, it's going to be very obvious. On the other hand, if you didn't quite go all the way to the wall with the trim paint, from right here, nobody's going to be able to tell, okay? Paint the trim in the room and get professional results. Now, you still got to do some touch-up and some cleanup. Maybe you're not completely happy with all those lines that you painted. Well, I got a couple tricks to show you in the next video on doing your touch-up and cleanup and finishing this job. Of course, you can find that on my website, howtopaintahouserite.com, where you will find a lot of helpful information and a complete series of videos on interior and exterior painting that I've put together to help you paint your house right.